afternoon on this Friday, October 11th. I'm Yumna Naufal, and these are today's headlines. Progressive Socialist Party leader Walid Jumblat drops his support for a new cabinet in which each of the main political camps would get 8 ministers. Human Rights Watch says Syrian rebels allied with fighters kill at least 190 civilians and abduct more than 200. And the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, which is overseeing the destructions of Syria's arsenal, wins the 2013 Nobel Peace Prize. Progressive Socialist Party leader Walid Jumblat has dropped his support for a new cabinet in which each of the main political camps would get 8 ministers, saying the 996 formula gives the formation of a government a better chance. Now, the government formation is still at a deadlock, but in an interview with a Safir newspaper published on Friday, Jumblat said giving the March 8 and 14 alliances, which is currently discussing the potential formation of a government, 9 ministers each and the centrist 6 ministers would be the best solution. Jumblat denied that he was the first to propose this formula, saying Speaker Nabih Berri had come up with the idea before him to resolve the crisis. Meanwhile, Prime Minister-designate Tamam Salam has been trying since April to come up with the cabinet lineup, but he has blamed conditions and counter-conditions set by the rival parties on the failure to form his government. Free Patriotic Movement leader MP Michel Aoun is accusing caretaker Prime Minister Najib Mikati of escaping his responsibilities rather than calling for a cabinet session to approve oil drilling decrees. Describing Mikati as the hero of irresponsibility in oil exploration, Aoun said the caretaker PM is escaping his responsibility in calling for an oil session, and everyone is accusing the other of rejecting such sessions. He also accused Mikati of not having the ability to resolve patriotic issues. If there is a decision to dismantle the state, he wondered, ahead of an MPM conclave held at the Deir Al-Ala Country Club in Beit Mede. Just to remind you, 2 decrees are yet to be approved to award tenders for offshore oil and gas exploration. Their approval would designate Lebanon's 10 offshore blocks for exploration and determine the model for revenue sharing. And an international court has published one more arrest warrant related to the killing of Rafi al-Hariri, the former Lebanese prime minister that almost pushed the country into civil war. The announcement comes months after the actual indictment. The Special Tribunal for Lebanon in The Hague has already indicted the 5th suspect, Hassan Habib Mirhi, on July 31st for the 2005 bombing that killed Hariri and 21 others in Beirut, but kept it a secret to give the Lebanese government time to attempt to arrest him. Prosecutors say Mirhi, like the 4 suspects previously indicted by the court, is a supporter of Hezbollah, the political party and paramilitary group. They say he helped plan the bomb attack and afterwards tried to hide Hezbollah's alleged responsibility. Hezbollah denies any role in killing Hariri, the billionaire politician who did much for this country. The UN Security Council is backing a plan by UN leader Ban Ki-moon for a joint mission with the global chemical arms watchdog to destroy Syria's weapons. Ban says up to 100 experts in the UN Organization for the Prevention of Chemical Weapons mission will be needed to carry out an operation to eliminate Syria's banned arms. After the first Security Council talks on Ban's recommendations, Russia's UN envoy Vitaly Churkin said that no objections were raised. The Council's 15 envoys had agreed that the UN and the OPCW are doing a great job, according to France's UN ambassador, Gérard Araud. A chemical weapons attack in Damascus in August, which left hundreds dead, sparked an international crisis that led to threats of a U.S. military strike against Syrian government targets. However, the Security Council passed a resolution on September 27th backing a Russian-U.S. plan to destroy President Assad's chemical weapons by mid-2014. And Syrian rebels allied with Muslim fighters killed at least 190 civilians and abducted more than 200 during an offensive against pro-government villages. This is according to the New York-based Human Rights Watch, which described the August 4th killing as a war crime and said the attacks against unarmed civilians in more than a dozen villages in the coastal province of Lediyeh were systematic. In a 105-page report based on a visit to the area a month later, HRW said the attacks could even amount to a crime against humanity. Witnesses say rebels went house to house, in some cases executing entire families, and in other cases killing men and taking women and children hostages. The villagers belong to the minority Alawite sect, the offshoot of Shia Islam, which forms the backbone of President Assad's regime and which conservative Muslims consider heretics. In our most recent report, you can still see their blood. Human Rights Watch has documented that in an opposition offensive that began on August the 4th in the Latakia countryside, that rebel forces killed in the course of the operation at least 190 civilians. We also know that 200 civilians, primarily women and children, continue to be held by opposition groups that conducted the operation. Findings are very serious violations have taken place by rebel forces in the Latakia countryside. The systematic nature of the attacks on the civilian population, the coordinated nature and advanced planning that went into this operation shows that this is not just the work of some rogue fighters within these rebel groups, but rather this was a planned attack against the civilian population. We have documented both war crimes and crimes against humanity by the Syrian government. This has included systematic torture and arbitrary detention of individuals in detention facilities run by the government across the country. We have also documented large-scale executions perpetrated by pro-government and government forces, most recently in Tartus Governorate, in Baida and Banias. So we know that serious violations are happening on both sides of the conflict. The Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, which is overseeing the destructions of Syria's arsenal, has won the 2013 Nobel Peace Prize. The $1.25 million prize will be presented in Oslo on December 10th, the anniversary of the death of Swedish industrialist Alfred Nobel, who founded the awards in his 1895 will. More in this report.
It was a tight competition for the Nobel Peace Prize this year. The Norwegian Nobel Committee in Oslo had to choose between Pakistan's teenage activist Malala Yousafzai, who has become an emblem of the fight against the most radical forms of Islamism, and the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons. But the latter ended up earning this year's prize for its extensive efforts to rid the world of chemical arsenals.
The Norwegian Nobel Committee has decided that the Nobel Peace Prize for 2013 is to be awarded to the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, OPCW, for its extensive work for eliminating chemical weapons. In 1992-93, a convention was drawn up prohibiting also the production and storage of such weapons. It came into force in 1997. Since then, OPCW has, through inspections, the instructions and other means, sought the implementation of the Convention. 189 states have acceded to the Convention to date. The conventions and the work of OPCW have defined the use of chemical weapons as a taboo under international law. Recent events in Syria, where chemical weapons have again been put to use, have underlined the need to enhance the efforts to do away with such weapons.
Based in The Hague, Netherlands, the OPCW was formed in 1997 to enforce the Chemical Weapons Convention, the first international treaty to outlaw an entire class of weapons. Today's award comes just days before Syria officially joins the organization, and as its inspectors are on a highly risky UN-backed disarmament mission based in Damascus to verify and destroy President Bashar al-Assad's arsenal of poison gas and nerve agents amid a raging civil war. By giving the award to the largely faceless international organization, the Nobel Committee found a way to highlight the Syrian conflict, now in its third year, without siding with any group involved in the fighting. UN war crimes investigators have accused both sides of wrongdoing, though they said earlier this year that the scale and intensity of rebel abuses hasn't reached that of the regime.
Coming up next, an extramarital affairs website CEO says infidelity is in our genes. Stay with us for this story. Welcome back. A car bomb exploded outside the Swedish consulate in the Libyan city of Benghazi, seriously damaging the building but causing no casualties, according to a security official. The Swedish mission is one of the few remaining diplomatic offices remaining in Benghazi, the hub of the 2011 uprising that toppled longtime ruler Muammar Gaddafi. A powerful explosion in front of the Swedish consulate caused serious damage to it and neighboring buildings, but no casualties, according to Colonel Abdullah Zaidi, the security official. It is located in Benghazi's Al Fouet district, not far from the Egyptian consulate, which was bombed in August. Nobody claimed responsibility for Friday's attack, which occurred just days after a U.S. Special Forces raid captured a Libyan al-Qaeda suspect in Tripoli. Benghazi has been hit by a wave of attacks against government offices and targeted killings in recent months as security agencies struggle to secure Libya since the 2011 civil war. AshleyMadison.com, the dating website for people seeking affairs with married individuals, which claims 20 million members worldwide, has dropped another pin on its map. The company cast out its first line in Japan in June, reeling in under 500,000 members within 3 months, according to Noel Biderman, the company's CEO. And he says this is making it our most successful launch ever. The infidelity website launched in Hong Kong last month, its 29th market since starting 11 years ago in Canada, and now has 80,000 members. Well, it makes Hong Kong the most successful launch rate per capita, showing a massive pent-up demand, according to Biderman. Now, while Asian countries are typically seen as more conservative, he says different cultural values do not diminish the demand for infidelity. He's quoted as saying, "We're just trying to address a universal behavior and pattern targeting people from all walks of life. Infidelity is in our DNA. I'm just riding a tidal wave, a social change where women lead and men follow." And finally, Hajj pilgrims who are unwell or who have chronic diseases like diabetes are being urged to postpone their visit to the holy Islamic shrines at Mecca because of continuing concern over the coronavirus, now known as the Middle East Respiratory Syndrome. The warning from Britain's health officials comes as 3 million Muslims from around the world make their journey to Saudi Arabia for the annual pilgrimage. Linda Tamim has the report.
Devout Muslims look forward to making this trip. The pilgrimage to Mecca is one of the 5 pillars of the Islamic religion. It requires able-bodied Muslims to take this journey at least once in their lifetime, but these spectacular and vast gatherings also pose a potential health risk. In previous years, there has been concern about the meningococcal meningitis, SARS, polio, and even the plague. This year, the concern is still the coronavirus called Middle East Respiratory Syndrome. There have been 136 cases around the world, including 58 deaths. The vast majority of these have been in Saudi Arabia. In Britain, health officials at Public Health England are urging an estimated 20,000 UK pilgrims to ensure they are fit enough.
Coronaviruses are a family of viruses that range on the one hand from the sort of virus that causes the common cold here every winter through to the virus that caused the big SARS epidemic around the world just over 10 years ago. So it's a spectrum it causes of mild illness to serious. The current one, the Middle East Respiratory Syndrome, MERS, is somewhere in the middle.
Since MERS emerged, 8 million people have visited Saudi Arabia with no ill effects. Health officials believe the people who have fallen victim of the MERS virus have tended to have other diseases, which has made them more vulnerable.
What we've seen from the evidence produced by Saudi Arabia is that the vast majority of cases, almost all of the serious cases, have some other illness as well as getting the MERS. So they've had diabetes, they've had respiratory illness, they've had heart disease. So the vast majority of severe cases have had other illnesses already.
Restrictions have already been put in place. In order to travel to the Hajj, pilgrims need to have a license from the Saudi authorities. These licenses are restricted in number and divided among countries worldwide. Pilgrims who discover they are ill on arrival in Saudi Arabia are urged to seek medical treatment straight away and not to contribute to the spread of the virus by resuming their travels. Those who do fall ill are well catered for, as the country has built extra hospitals and provides more health facilities and resources during the Hajj. In the meantime, scientists around the world are searching for treatments.
This marks the end of our bulletin for today. Let me remind you of our Friday headlines. Progressive Socialist Party leader Walid Jumblat drops his support for a new cabinet in which each of the main political camps would get 8 ministers. Baghdad is at a stalemate. Human Rights Watch says Syrian rebels allied with fighters kill at least 190 civilians and abduct more than 200. And the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, which is overseeing the destruction of Syria's arsenal, wins the 2013 Nobel Peace Prize. I'm Yumna Naufal, live in Beirut. Noor Ail is next with the French Bulletin. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you again tomorrow.